Timo, in the past few years, we have seen a major shift in consumer behavior, consumer expectations. What do you, from a Geopost point of view, see in this?
Yeah, well, I think there's two main developments that we identify. The first is the need of consumers, online shoppers, to really be in control of the process from ordering a product online until receiving the product in their hands. So that's one, and including, let's say, the flexibility to intervene in the process even when the product is already on the way. So changing the day of delivery, change the pickup or the receive location. So that's a main one that is impacting our business, because we really need to make sure that we build in triggers in the process and also in-flight options in the process in order to give that flexibility and control to the consumer. So that's one. And the second, I think it's a direct consequence of the first one, is the growing need for delivery options outside just receiving the product at home. The out-of-home is really a growing market. Every year we perform this questionnaire. It's the biggest research actually on online shopping behavior in Europe. Over 24,000 people interviewed every year. And in that research we see increasingly every year the percentage that prefers to pick up the parcel in either a locker or in a shop or a neighborhood point or whatever. And that trend is really accelerating. It seems to be accelerating in the past 2 years, maybe triggered by the COVID. But we expect actually in our calculations and in our strategic ambitions, we calculate with an end percentage of somewhere around 20-25% of all the parcels that will be delivered to out-of-home locations within now and let's say 3 to 4 years. So that's impacting our business and also the way that our network develops.
And looking at this from a standpoint of your customers, the retailers and e-tailers, how does it impact them, and what do they need to change in terms of logistics processes?
Yeah, well, changing the logistics process, partly it's following the changing infrastructure of the parcel carriers, of the parcel companies such as ourselves, where we are developing this out-of-home network very rapidly to be ahead of this development, to make sure that we can deliver that percentage of parcels to out-of-home. So our network of out-of-home locations in Europe will grow till above 100,000 locations already this year by the end of the year, all of Europe. So it's the densest out-of-home network in Europe. So that's one. Following that development and challenging, I think, the carriers as well to stay ahead of that development. Secondly, I think, especially when operating cross-border in multiple countries, it's very crucial to know the exact differences in consumer preference per country, but also the availability, of course, of the networks and the options that you have in the country. But just as an example, in the Baltics, for instance, over 90% of all the parcels, very close to 100%, is already delivered to locker stations. That's the norm in those countries. Whereas, for instance, in the Netherlands, the number of lockers is growing, but the number of consumers using the lockers is still very low. So if you want to sell effectively and successfully internationally, you need to adapt to those local specificities.
And I know that in the Nordics, the number of out-of-home locations and lockers are very popular as well. Do you have any idea what the reasoning behind that is? So why in these regions these lockers are so popular?
Yeah, my personal view on that is twofold. One is in the high density areas, it's the same probably development that drives it as we see in the rest of Europe. So the flexibility to, when you are on your way, pick up a product when you are on your way anyway. Specifically in the Nordics, what I see, especially and what I hear from our customers, but also from partners in the Nordics, is that also in these very low dense areas, of which you have a lot in the Nordic countries, so the population density is very low. Also in these very non-dense areas where people live very remotely, people are already used to either receiving a product upon appointment, which is less flexible, and due to the fact that they want to be flexible as well, you see there more locations where they can pick up the product when they have received the message that the product is there when they are on their way. So it's going to the product rather than getting the product to you based on an appointment.
So now if consumers get more flexible and more demanding, how do you manage them? So how do you manage their expectations and how do you and do you try to steer them towards certain solutions?
Well, the first part of your question, it's all I think in digital data and IT. Creating full transparency on what's happening. Making every scan event or every parcel movement visible for both the one sending it and the one receiving it, so everybody knows what's about to happen. And then having a very close communication option to the consumers as well, digitally via an app or a portal, to allow them to intervene in the process as quickly as possible. And with that, we call it our predict service, but with that, we allow the consumers, or the customers of our customer, to intervene in the process until sometimes 30 minutes before we are supposed to be at the location, to intervene in the process and to change the location or the moment. So that's one, being very transparent and having the right communication tools in place. So I think that's the most crucial one. And for the second part of your question, one more time, what was the
my thinking was that consumers might over-expect.
Yes.
So whether there are some things that you are doing to actively manage expectations.
Yeah, that's again that's all in transparency. So if you make visible what is happening or what is about to happen, at least you're already managing these expectations to a great extent. But where we are more and more developing into, which is also a data-driven solution, I think, is also potential deviations from what customers expect. So if we see a delay somewhere in the process, that we are able to send also the receiver already a notification that something has changed in the process and that the parcel will either be later or that something else will change, or allow them the option to intervene again. So that is something we're more and more developing into.
If I would ask you to take out your glass ball and look into the future, what do you see as what's the next thing that will happen for delivery in the delivery market?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. It's and the glass ball, indeed. It's good that you mentioned that, because who knows can say. But in the glass ball, I think in general this out of home will even become more and more popular. Potentially even, like we see in the Baltics in some countries, that it will be the dominating way of getting your product in your hands when you are an online shopper. So I think that's one. And the other one is that for our type of business, I think we will become more and more digital or a tech company in the core, rather than only an operational company. So that's a development that's clearly here and that will continue to be the case. We also see that, but there you see in other continents, other countries, that the development technologically, like in China for instance, are going very rapidly and are sometimes already ahead of what we are doing here in Europe. So autonomous vehicles in specific areas that will be on the street, like you already see them in China as well. That's all techniques and applications of new technology that we are testing as well in Europe, just to learn, to discover what works, what doesn't work, and to apply it when it works. So also changing the way that products move, of course, will be impacted by technology.
I guess we live in a very exciting time to be in logistics. Timo, I would like to thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and giving us a peek in your glass bowl to see what's in the future. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oké, top.
De vraag over de beurs.
Oh ja, die moeten we ook doen.
Wel zijn dus.
Ja. Ja.
Dus de vraag
Is het jullie eerste jaar?
Nee, we zijn hier denk ik nu 6, 7 jaar.
Jullie zijn al van het eerste uur.
Ja.
Oké. Dan wil ik wat vragen stellen over hoe jullie het event hebben zien ontwikkelen.
Ja.
Hoe jullie het toepassen. Dus wat halen jullie hier uit? Oké. Dus dan kort over de veranderingen. Wat halen jullie hier uit en wat voor mensen komen jullie hier tegen? Dus ik denk dat ze bij Deliver wel graag willen horen. Op welk niveau kun je hier mensen tegenkomen? You have been with Deliver events almost from the start. How have you seen the event develop over the years?
Yeah, it's interesting one. It's of course it has become bigger. That's obvious. So the number of people attending has grown, but it has really developed compared to the first time I attended personally. I think it was 6 years ago or something. I've seen that the impact of the event and the representation of the industry on this event has grown. And for us at Geopost, this is one of the major events of the year to meet with retailers. Many of the people we deal with on a daily basis to discuss contracts, to discuss cooperation and the growth or development of cooperation are attending this event. So it's a unique opportunity to meet many of them in only 2 days' time. It saves out a lot of traveling. And also the industry, so the peers and the colleagues of the industry. It's also one of these moments in the year that you can really see who is promoting what kind of topic, what's cooking, who is presenting himself in what way. So very interesting, both on the retailer side and also on the carrier industry side.